And that's a really other important question as a founder to ask. How long is the life of the fund? And the reason why it's important is if it's only 5 or 7 years that they expect you to return that money, it's not very long. They're going to whip you and they're going to want that money back fast.
You're listening to Not My First Guess. I'm Hattie Willis, your host, and each episode I talk to an entrepreneur, investor, or startup expert to unpack their hardest moments, biggest wins, and hard-earned advice so we can shortcut our learnings as founders together. Today I'm very excited because we are doing a special episode all about fundraising. This is a topic I get asked about all the time from founders, wanting to know who they should go to for investment, what investors are really looking for, and what they should be asking investors in turn. It's a topic we've talked about a ton on this podcast. We've had angel investors give their perspective, venture capitalists share theirs, and founders of all different stages talk about their journeys. So it seemed only right that we start to amalgamate some of these. When we came to it though, we had so much content, it couldn't fit in a single episode. So this will in fact be the first in a small series. Don't worry if you love our guest deep dive interviews as well. I promise I'll be back in between, so stay tuned to not miss any of it. In this episode, we dive into 5 different perspectives, with 3 founders turned investors and 2 founders sharing their experience, one of crowdfunding and one of going after angel investment. We discuss the flick test and other tips from founder turned angel Chris Howard, lessons on taking it to the crowd from Sophie Meisen-Baron, founder of Mama Made, how venture capital really works with Zoe Pedden, partner at Ananda Impact Ventures. The most common advice Devon Hunt, venture partner at Seed Camp, gives to startups he invests in. The magic of never giving up with Amber Probin, co-founder of Pequel, and much more. So without further ado, let's get started. First up, let's dive into some tips and tricks from founder and angel investor Chris Howard.
One of the best ways to get an angel's investor's money is to look at things that they've invested in before, become friends with one of the founders.
Yeah.
And then, so if you can say, hey, look, I'm reaching out to you because I'm friends with X. And in this
100%.
company, I was hoping you'd meet me too. 99 times out of 100, they'll just take the meeting. You need to put yourself in the position of an investor that pre-pandemic at least would probably look at their decks in an Uber between meetings. They'll probably go, okay, I've got like these starred emails. I'll open some of them up and I'll look at 3 or 4 of these between meetings. And so the first thing they're going to do is open your deck and just slide quickly through it. They're going to be looking for certain key things. They're going to say like size of market, what's your traction, might go to your team, and then I might go at the very end back to the problem. So a flick test is where you can get somebody to just go slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, slide 4. Within 60 seconds, get 90% of the kind of content. And you do that by thinking like a journalist, in fact, where you can read a newspaper just by reading the headlines. So you should be able to read a deck just by reading the headlines. And like, if you can do that in a deck, you will get them to go, okay, I'll keep that one starred and I'm going to look at that in more detail when I get back to the office. And so making sure that your deck passes a flick test with statements at the very beginning, like, we exist to help artists and whatever else become credible economic founders. Okay, cool, I get it. Next thing, what we've invented is we have proven beyond any doubt through 800 founders, we can create net economic positive founders out of the creator class. Okay, cool. Next one, this is a $75 billion opportunity that doesn't include tangential markets. Okay, cool. Our founders have 6 exits and whatever. Okay, cool. I'm going to read that deck when I get back to the office. Who cares what the stuff in between is? And the flick test is far more important than almost any other part of your pitch deck. That's the first thing that most people kind of get wrong, if my opinion is worthy enough of a right and wrong. One deck does not serve all investors. And that's like you're kind of trained to make your deck, right? And there's your one deck. And so you send it out. But investors have all kinds of different owner motivations. So they may be motivated to flip your company as quickly as possible. There might be a VC, therefore they have criteria on even meetings they can take, which sounds ridiculous. You're just like, surely they'll take anything that's a good investment. You're like, no, they won't actually, because a VC can only invest in things that they've got permission to invest in. And if you don't fit the criteria of the permission system that they agreed with their investors, They won't take the meeting, and they'll just reply and say not a fit. And but you don't know that. So whenever I make a pitch deck, I make a ridiculously long pitch deck, like insanely long, which I'll never share. I'll happily share the Rattles one if people want it, but it's so fucking long. It's like 40 pages. And then when I send a deck to an investor, I'll say, okay, is this a venture investor? Which means that they want to see, can this company be purchased, basically. Okay, they're a venture investor. I'll remove all things that aren't relevant to what makes this company purchasable. And then I'll say, okay, were they a previous founder or not? If they weren't a previous founder, get rid of all the mission stuff. No one cares. Who gives a shit? If they were a previous founder, get rid of all of like the super detailed business shit. They don't give a crap. And you end up making this like 10-page deck, and you get like 5 or 6 variations from this one master deck. And you kind of need to categorize the investors you're speaking to. And like it will 10x the number of replies you get, like immediately. And so a lot of people don't target the psychology of the investor at all. In fact, I wouldn't even say well enough. I just mean not at all.
Next up, we're going to talk about crowdfunding myths with Sophie Meisenbauer. Now, really important to note is that Sophie raised this round a few years ago, and since then, things have gone even crazier in the crowdfunding space. Most crowdfunding platforms require you to have up to 90% already committed before you can raise on their platform. So the idea that this is instead of traditional fundraising path is even more of a myth than when we recorded.
Crowdfunding is never just crowdfunding. It's a big myth that you can just put your startup up on the platform and away you go. So maybe let's start there. Can you tell us what you did before you even put Mama Made on Seedrs, which is the crowdfunding platform you used?
Yeah, no, this is like exposing how the sausage is made, I guess. Yeah, it was a lot of legwork before we launched on Seedrs. I would say we came onto the platform with probably half the round committed, maybe over half. We'd been kind of carrying on the way we did the last round with angels, was kind of connecting with people, asking for introductions from our existing investors. You know, we did speak to some funds. I didn't really want institutional money. I didn't think we were quite ready for it.
Can you unpack that a little bit? Because I think founders get very caught up in the idea of institutional capital. So why didn't you think you were ready?
There's certain funds that I think Mama Made would be a great fit for that we were still too early stage for. So though our metrics were really healthy, we weren't at the revenues that I think we would have needed to get into some of the VCs that I think could really catapult us. And I didn't want to take institutional money just for the sake of having institutional money. It can often mean kind of more complicated agreements, share structures. Your board would have to change. I wanted to kind of retain the same feeling of control, I guess, over our company while still seeing how much value we got from our angels, wanting to expand that. So getting more value add angels in, and at the same time, really feeling strongly about activating our community to be involved in Mama Made and wanting to leave room for them in this round, which is where the Seedrs piece came in. So I wanted to keep things simple because I sort of wasn't ready to go down the route of having a VC on board. And so yeah, even though we've had some amazing conversations with VCs, and I would even say we've got good relationships with some VCs, really relying on them in an amazing way to introduce us to angels for this round, kind of recognizing that we're now building up to eventually have an institutional round. So that was sort of where we approached it. And so we got sort of a few angels in. We had a lot of our existing investors follow on, so they were topping up their investments. And then we came to the Seedrs platform to really activate our community. And the result was, it was just incredible.
So you've got your angels pre-committed, ready before you go on the platform. So how much of your round is kind of committed before you go on Seedrs?
It was about half, I would say. Yeah, about half.
Yeah, and I think, am I right in saying from memory it's something like 40% is what you have to have before you go on most crowdfunding platforms already committed?
Yeah, exactly. I think they said 40%. So we got just over that, maybe even closer to 60%. And then, the kind of once we went live, it was incredible to see kind of how quickly we then hit our target. It was within 24 hours, and then we ended up basically doubling our target on the platform.
And again, that really comes down to community that you've already built who are desperate to buy into the brand that they love. So again, an important lesson around building that, if you can, before you try and raise, and not raising just for capital's sake early when you don't need that capital yet to scale. Were there any other big lessons from crowdfunding? Things that you would do differently, or things that people shared with you that really helped you raise?
I think, as you say, it's so much more complex than just like going to the crowd. I think we got really good advice from one of our angels really early on, who was like, the crowd will always be there. You want to make sure that your business is kind of ready for it, and that, you're in a position to raise enough money beforehand, before going to the crowd. So not seeing the crowd as like, oh, let me just go there because I'm struggling to raise. For us, it was a really intense marketing activity. Essentially, it was probably one of the biggest campaigns we had done. We had this major project plan for it, and it was an extremely demanding, exhausting experience. I'm extremely grateful for it. But yeah, it's so much more than just deciding to slap something up on it. And the results were incredible. And being able to kind of bring in customers with ticket sizes ranging from £10 to £50,000 was just insane, and really shows the kind of breadth of person and background that we were helping at Mama Made. And I suppose any learnings would be, we spoke to a lot of businesses that had raised on Cedars before, and that was kind of the main tip that we got. And I'm glad that we took it on board, and we took time with the campaign, and we didn't rush it. We ended up pushing the launch date by a few months, and I'm glad we did, because ultimately the results were what we wanted.
Okay, this next section is something I wish every founder had access to and could listen to before they go and raise VC. So if you have a friend who's thinking about it, please share it with them as a public service announcement. We have Zoe Pedden, who is a founder turned VC herself. She actually became a VC in the firm that backed her when she was a founder at Ananda Impact Ventures. And in her full episode, she talks at length about how venture capital really works. It's critical to understand how the system functions and why it functions that way before you go and try and raise from it. So really, really critical, if you're even contemplating venture capital, to understand these mechanics before you start.
Firstly, just how does venture capital work from the perspective of a venture capitalist? So going into, how funds are raised and how ultimately they need to pay back their investors.
So let's start with how funds are raised. So start off, you have a fund, and within that, it's in a portfolio. So we have to go out and do the fundraising process, just like founders. What we pitch is an investment thesis. So this is who we are and what we do and how we're going to return your money and what the return is going to look like. So we say that we want to build a portfolio. It's like 20 investments. Some people do 15, some people do 40. All depends on, it's like the ratios that you're looking at. So we all do, say, 20 investments from seed to Series A, looking for perhaps half Series A and half at seed, or, a bit of in between with the post-seed. And our initial ticket size goes from 500 to 3 million. So that's always a good thing to ask, what's your initial ticket size? And then, but we say 50% is follow-on. So the first initial ticket is, for us, 54 million. And then we put 54 million is saved for the winners. So people who are doing well, who want extra money, so we can have as much again as put in. And in our case, up to 15% of the funds. So you have a limit on how much of that 108 you put in. So risk management, it's all about risk management. So the important thing as a founder to understand is, how big is the fund? How many investments are you going to make? What's your initial ticket size? What's, the follow-on? How much do you save back the follow-on? What's the most that you can put? So then you can start to work out your funding strategy. And what we do is the way we get paid is we have a management fee. So this is what's normally called a 2 and 20. So 2% of the total fund amount is for fees. That's how we pay ourselves. So on a 10 million fund, you don't have very much, and you probably won't be taking any salaries. But as you build each fund, your 2% starts adding up. And the lifetime of these funds are generally, for us, 10 years. Some people have them for 5 or 7 years? And that's a really other important question as a founder to ask. How long is the life of the fund? And the reason why it's important is if it's only 5 or 7 years that they expect you to return that money, that's not very long. They're going to whip you and they're going to want that money back fast. And then, so with us at 10 years, it's called more patient capital. That's the classification. It takes a longer time. So we have like 4 sectors that we invest in. We invest in education, in healthcare, in climate tech, and equality. And you don't see many people these days just doing with the rest of anything, because how are they going to have that sector expertise or even start to build it up? Is this good for you as a founder? Someone who invests in anything, it's better when they have an investment thesis as an investor so that they focus on you, so that they build the networks, they've got the expertise, they've got other ones in the portfolio, so you can see their track record in that portfolio of what they've invested in. And maybe, there's some synergy or something like that to work with this other one in the portfolio, and you'll have access to that because you share that investor. And then you can also, if you know that other ones in the portfolio, you can get a reference on whether they're a decent investor too. Always really important to do some back reference checking on the investors and see if they actually behave well in the times when things are tough, which we're all about to already see, or we're going to see over the next 18 months as we slide into a recession currently. When things are tough, everyone shows their true colours, and some people will back out, or there might be say we'll put money in, but only on these terms, which are not favourable to the founder or to the employees. How do they behave? Always check that one out and check that they're sensible in their behaviour. But yes, that's a lot of things that I've said there, isn't it?
So I guess another question is who should be considering venture capital funding? Or put another way, venture capital funding does put you on a certain path. As you say, you as a venture capitalist need to see that return.
Got to get an exit.
Yeah, and then the growth metrics they need. So what do you think founders should know before they put themselves on that path? And, I worry that it's become such a de facto.
Yeah, that it's the thing to do.
Become. Yeah.
And it's
exactly.
not, if you look at the stats, it's 0.05% of businesses are suitable, or get VC funding. It's not normal to have a VC-backed business. It's not the thing. It's one way. And it's one hell of a ride, to do it. The pace, it's relentless. The expectations are relentless because the fast pace of growth that's required affects the way that you run your business, the culture as well. You will have to make some compromises because of the types of people you need to employ are going to need to be suitable for that fast pace. They're signing up for that. There's lots of other jobs they could be doing where they're going to be able to take more holiday or feel able to relax at the end of the day and go home and clock off at 5. This is the way. Not all the time. You can step back at some times, but the first few years it's relentless and but very rewarding when it works because you've built it. But you won't get that from a more mature business. You won't see the impact as an early employee of what you do in a startup. So it's incredible, but exhausting at the same time. So I'd say you've got a price tag on you. Don't start going on that if you want to hand it down to your kids or you've got some kind of views of a generational business or something that you want to build over 20 or 30 years and think that you're going to be in charge of it yourself. It may last that long, but you may not be the best person to lead it. Some founders grow as CEOs and become good operators, but it becomes very much about managing the board, the shareholders, and its people. There's none of this product. You're not involved in that anymore. You're not involved in the innovation side. Only people get to do the fun stuff. It's not the same at all as it is during the first 5 years or so. And maybe that's not for you. So maybe you want to do the governance side and managing other people's expectations. But that's not for everyone. So be aware that your role, you may evolve and you may not. So you may need to step to the side and how you're going to feel about that when it's your baby. And maybe you started off saying you wanted to start a business so you could have control over your time of your life and no boss. But you take investment, you got a boss. They will make you sign a service agreement. You will become under contract, and they can get rid of you. Yeah, you can check the terms as bad leavers and things like that, but you will have performance requirements in there, and you'll be employed again in your own business. So you've got to get comfortable with that. And of course, good lawyers, and if you've got if they really, really want you as an investor, you could, judge, pull back on some of those terms and make it more favorable to you, but it's tough. But you will be beholden to someone else. So you will not be the independent person. So once you start on the treadmill, taking from external investors, particularly VCs, then you're going to have a price tag. You need to sell. You need to grow it at a relentless pace. You need to hire people who are used to running at that relentless pace, which may or may not be your mates. It's unlikely to be the kind of people that you'd always want to spend, your fun time with. This is the business. And it's good to get a diverse team with very experienced in this, as you raise Series A and Series B. It's not a family business anymore. This isn't a family. It's hard-nosed, and there will be decisions with any business really, but you'll be making those decisions every day that are really tough decisions that are not very nice. Having to get rid of people. You do that anyway in business, but the speed, the amount of times that you have to do it, it's relentless in a VC-backed one. And you just got to be prepared to be. It's not pleasant, is what I'm saying. You're not everybody's going to like you.
And I think it's, it is one great path if you want to grow at this pace, and particularly if you want to own or lead a market, or you just, have this deep passion for wanting your impact to go as far as possible, as fast as possible. There are huge pros to it. But I think it's just helpful, to know what you're letting
a bit of the
yourself in
negatives
for.
there, haven't I? I guess it was just, you don't hear too much about that side from a VC. We're always trying to encourage people and sell things. That's what we are with sales people. But I mean, it's amazing. There's nothing like it. There is nothing like it. But you must be prepared for the toll on your health, your private life. Everyone talks about how you get balance. There really isn't any balance. It's your choice, though, to do that. And you have a choice, just going in with your eyes wide open as to what that choice means, and that you commit to do that for up to 10 years is what you'd be expected. And then, so serial entrepreneurs who raise VC that go back and want to do it again, hats off. Everybody is like hats off, because they're rare as anything, and I think it's great. For me, like, brilliant. They already know the game, don't have to go through all that. They know exactly what they're in for another 10 years. They probably want to do it really quickly next time, but it doesn't always work like that, even second or third time round. You try and do it quicker, but it's a different market to what it was 10 years previously when you started the old one. It's not the same anymore. But there are some things that are good about serial entrepreneurs too. They just know the ways. Brilliant networks from the previous one as well. Do things a little bit quicker that way. But yes, it is brilliant being a founder, but it's not the be all and end all. There's so many other ways to run a business and to own it, to be able to take time off, to feel a little bit more relaxed, as it grows. It'll be slower paced. Maybe that's frustrating for you. It's just a type, and you can do many types of businesses in your life. But this is just one.
Next up is actually our first ever episode guest, Devon Hunt. In this episode, Devon talked a lot about his experience as a founder, and then brought in his experience now as an investor through Seed Camp. So in this clip, you'll hear him talking about the common advice he gives startups who are coming to him for investment.
The most common piece of advice I give is go do better customer development. I don't care how confident you are. You don't have the sort of anecdotal evidence, I think, to be as confident as you feel. And always, like in the best of things, like even the people we invest in, I often give a custom workshop with them to re-kick. Because one of the things that often happens post-investment, especially at seed stage, which is where we play at, is the investment's a bit of a confidence signal, right? It's like, oh, I guess we got something right. We got investment. And so that connection to the market sometimes drops off for a little bit. And so that's why I'm like, no, keep it there. You guys have hustled so much already. Keep that customer voice in your company. Keep talking to them. Keep trying to sell. Don't disappear and build V2. Like, just do that. So it's cust dev. And the other piece of advice, which I give way too often in the pitch room, is please show me the product. There's so many founders who are amazing, but they just forget to show us the actual thing they're building. And pitching is fucking stressful. Like you're there maybe for 30 minutes sometimes, depending on how busy your schedule is. And you got to convince us that your business is worth investing in. Like the best way to do that is to show us what you built. Like the team, awesome. We can discuss it in 5 minutes. We want to know your team. We want to know more. Of course, I don't care about the history of why the internet exists. Show me what you like you're here because we're interested in your company. Show me what you're building. Right? Show us why what you're building is unique. And we have this sort of thing sometimes where I'll text one of the partners and I'm like, I'm gonna tell them to show the product. And I'll just interrupt. Hey, stop pitching your business model. Show us the product, please. We get it. You can do Excel. Please show us what you're building. So yeah, it's like lead with value is the feedback. Show us what you're making. Doesn't matter how rough it is. Like we appreciate it. We get it.
How much as an investor are you looking at early stage, right? How much are you looking for that polish?
It entirely depends on the business and the founders, right? It's hard to describe, but we vet every business independently. Like we obviously think about the stuff we want to invest in, but we look at the founding team, what they can do, how they've done so far. And that changes both like the size of the round, how seriously we take their progress, how much faith we have in them being able to do it. We funded companies that are literally a pitch deck. And we funded companies that have thousands of customers already and everything in between. And a lot of it comes down to like how the founders talk about how they're going to execute, who they're going to hire, what they've done in the past, because that points to their ability to execute. So if we're looking at a product designer who's been at 3 major startups, we kind of trust they'll be able to build something. But if we're talking to someone who's just graduated university, did 2 years of McKinsey, and they want to build an AI modeling infrastructure, we're going to be like, listen, no technical co-founder, like this is a very risky bet. And we're probably going to say no to that. But if they came and said, hey, I'm modeling new financial services that merges crypto with fiat assets, we're like, you spent some time in the financial side of McKinsey, like that probably is the right skill set to do that. But hey, it's all contextual. We had an amazing team come pitch us. I'm going to try to keep this as anonymous as possible. Very impressive founders in their field. They were trying to launch a startup in a totally different field. And after a few questions, we realized it was very clear that they were interested in it, but they had no grounding in that field. So we can't make that bet at this stage. What we said was like, come back in 6 months. And lo and behold, I got in touch with them a few months later and they abandoned the idea entirely because it was more complicated than they thought.
Founder market fit's so key. And presumably you don't need to see that from both founders, right?
No, of course not. It's if anything, a diversity in the team, both intellectually and professionally is fantastic. That's good to see. We want people who are outsiders to build inside, but they have to show that they empathize with what they're trying to fix. If like a baker's like, I'm going to revolutionize fast food, and they're like an artisanal baker, I'm like, cool, but you get the person who consumes fast food. Actually, I've accidentally used a real case by accident. There's a founder who came in and was like, I spent 2 months at McDonald's to learn how fast. I'm like, oh, okay, yes, shit. Like he has embedded himself. He understands.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
Last but by no means least, we have Amber Probyn talking about her experiences fundraising for the world's first female urinal. One of her early investors was the co-founder of Monzo, Tom Blomfield. So I wanted to ask her how that came about, how she got him on board, and the value he's added. We also then go into some of the things she wished she knew earlier about fundraising.
Monzo's co-founder, Tom Blomfield, how did that come about? I'm curious. He's obviously a big name behind it.
Yeah, so he's one of our investors. He got involved when one of our peers from university, actually, she started a business too called KDN. It's like an AI video creation tool, really cool to look at. And he invested in her. And then we were talking to her at one point, said, yeah, we're looking for any investors that would be interested in this. And she said, oh, I'll let my investors know. So we gave her our one pager and a little bit of info about us. And he was interested. I think he looked at it for about 4 minutes, which is a lot for an investor. There's a platform where you put up your information. You can see what slide they've spent most time on. So you can work on what is it that they're interested in. And I think he was one of the investors that looked longest at 4 minutes, which shows the importance of how your information needs to be succinct and, and then we had half an hour Zoom call with him where we pitched our idea, sort of gave him a bit more feedback on his questions and things. And then after that, he invested. It was very quick, one of our quickest investors to commit. And once he committed, so many other people committed. Because obviously the first one is the hardest.
Yeah.
So he was our first investor to put money in the bank. So yeah, it was great. And he's so good because he replies really quickly. And I never expect that from investors, because I always think they're like these like next evolution of human for some reason. I'm like, oh, these investors, but he's so good at like respecting that. And I really want to be like that as a person. It's like, I want to respect people like that. And I want to be that person to, see, I guess he's a startup founder himself, so he understands the struggle of having to reach out to so many people and hear nothing. So when you do hear something straight away, it's amazing.
Were there any big lessons you had fundraising that maybe you think actually like this can shortcut someone else's learning?
I think when we learned that we could get money in the bank straight away instead of having to wait before you have enough founders committed for the whole round to get the money in the bank was a big eye opener, because then we changed from like waiting until everyone was ready to, I think it's advanced subscription, so ASA. And we were able to get like money in the bank which we could then use straight away. We didn't have to wait until we had the full sum. We could then build and manufacture our products straight away after that. So yeah, that was a really good thing to learn, which we didn't know about. So yeah, if you are looking to raise money, you don't have to wait until you have the whole group of investors ready to commit. You can just get it straight away. Also, convertible notes, we had no idea about them. We haven't used them this time, but it's definitely something to consider. I know Americans use that a lot. So I know our friends who have got tech startups, they use convertible notes a lot more. And they've gone to like Silicon Valley in America to sort of use that there, because people are way more used to using that convertible notes. Think like the persistence that you need as well. Like one of our investors, I think we emailed them 15 times before we got a reply, but they were like, yeah, this sounds great, like, well, let me invest. And then we didn't hear anything from them. Another 15 replies later, and we literally given up. We're just doing this for fun now. We're just like, maybe this will work, might as well. And then they invested, and they've got so many great links in the industry, and we don't need them just yet, because we're yet to go international, but they've got so many international links that we can pull on. And we wouldn't have had that if we gave up the 14th try, And
it's not over till they say no.
Yeah, it really is, because it really is on them. If they're finding it annoying to say no thank you, it's kind of like getting over that social awkwardness of like, oh, I'm being annoying, or like, oh, this is too much, or they're just not interested. It's like, no, actually, I'm going to keep going. Keep persisting, and actually it gets you a lot more places. So yeah, I would keep telling founders to not give up on things. If you're not getting a reply in the 4th email, you have to just keep going.
Love. I think that's such a good one. Hi, me jumping back on just to say a massive thank you for listening to this special. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed compiling it. It was a very fun one to do. But seriously, a massive thank you for taking the time out. It means the world to us that you invest your time in listening to our incredible guests. And we feel beyond honoured that those guests choose to share their stories and expertise with us. If you did enjoy this episode, please do take a minute to like, share, rate it, particularly sharing with other founders who might get value from some of these lessons too. The way we grow is honestly through recommendations, and we want more founders to hear these hard moments and hard truths so that they feel less alone in their own entrepreneurial journey and avoid some of the common mistakes. Also, we've got so much coming up, so don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss any of our upcoming guests. They are epic.
And for those of you curious what I get up to when not interviewing founders for this show, I have a new startup, If We Raise, aiming to get expertise and capital to underrepresented founders earlier. You can follow what my co-founder Tim and I are up to via @IfWeRaiseTogether on Instagram or @IfWeRaise on LinkedIn and Twitter. We'll be sharing our lessons learned along the way, as well as highlighting the incredible founders and angel investors joining the If We Raise journey.